Welcome, everybody. This is a little bit of amusing today. Sometimes we get things coming in several times from different directions. And for me, I sometimes call it soup of the week. So, what's our flavor of soup this week? And it's really interesting. I I'm dealing with a few people right now who've just had. These people would probably be on the spiritual path in some way. And of course, we're investigating this thing. What is it to be spiritual but not religious? And in their journey, they've manifested somebody who is religious, who has a profound, confidence in God. And for these other people, I think they're Christians, okay. And for some people, they're processing the teachings from that relationship, and some people are embarking on that relationship right now. And it's interesting because I was pondering on this because these things are coming in, and these people are asking me about this. And I feel that this is just perfect on someone's journey. Um, because what I see a lot of in the neo-Gnostic way, this kind of new age way, is that people don't really have faith. Okay. And this is something I talk about quite a lot, this unaccountable, egoic, no humility sort of way of saying I'm just a divine child. And actually, the real spiritual journey comes when we realize that there are things that are bigger than us, okay? And that we can bow down to that. And in yogic philosophy, it's always said that grace will really only enter. You cannot choose when grace is going to enter, but often it will come at a moment where you really are bowing down in your most vulnerable and raw. So the mechanism, so I have a lot of respect for religions, and personally, my first the first coherent part of my spiritual awakening took place when I was 13 in a religious setting. And then it told me to get out, okay? And I don't need to go into that here, but I'm so grateful that that happened to me at a young age because feeling that ineffable, bigger than me energy, bigger than the little I that's in this body anyway, was really humbling, but it also gave me that faith, okay? And that came about because I was in a lot of prayer. I was on a kind of religious retreat, and I was either 12 or 13. And and then the light came that Christians talk of. And then the irony was that the light told me to leave church. But you can see that in my chart, okay? You can see that my relationship with spirituality is not necessarily through the orthodox dogmatic way of approaching it, but I have a lot of respect for religion, okay? Because some people need more of those structures in their lives. I just have a problem personally with the rigidity of these traditions that are very close scriptural readings that are all very subjective anyway, because the minute they've got to text form and been edited into some sort of thing, it's not really the raw spirit that really is the connection. And I think that this is something that we're coming into. And I wanted to speak of the fact that so many young adults are now going into religion. I remember I saw quickly some Russell Brand speaking about this about a year ago. And I think that this is one of these amazing responses to this kind of post-fact society and this bombardment with stimuli that people are realizing they need. They know there's something bigger, and maybe their higher self, as we might call it, is guiding them to that. So I think that it's really interesting because that these relationships are happening for people, these couplings for people, because I think that some of these people would have been stuck on their spiritual path if they hadn't met someone who truly has faith. And faith has been incredibly important for me in my journey. So I have faith in the divine. And recently, I'm still in India right now, and I really went on a kind of devotional journey recently on my own. And it strengthened that connection. It was another augmentation of that. And what I want to say is it gives us so much joy when we have faith in something and something bigger than us. And of course, we have the argument to say that we are all God, we're all the Godhead. But if we've got the ego and we haven't learned to bow down to something, we don't have humility, then it's really tricky. And as part of my journey here in India, I spent some time with a matriarch from the Kasi tribe who are over in Meghalaya. which is known as it's seven kind of northeasterly states of India that kind of a little bit separate from the others. And they're known as actually, those seven states are known as the Seven Sisters. And the Khasi tribe is one of the only surviving matrilineal societies in the world. And of course, it has its own issues, but the ownership of things is with women, and the way they approach marriage and all of these things is different to a lot of other countries. And actually, the Khasi tribe have the way that their culture is expressed. There's been a lot of influx of the church. So actually, they have Baptist sections, Catholic, Protestant, Presbyterian, all sorts of things all around Shillong, their main city. But one thing that really fascinated me when I was learning from this matriarch, and I was only there a few, like 2 or 3 days, but she was really fascinating. I was also reading up a lot about their culture, and this is where I see something that seems very universal, which I want to speak to. So for the Khasi tribe, I went to their sacred mountain, which is believed, like many other tribes will say, to be the navel of the world. Okay. And they believed there was this like kind of ladder and thread where the beings used to kind of go to and fro. So there was no real separation from God. And then basically greed and naughtiness took over, and that connection was severed. And so for the Khasi tribe, they realized that because in many ways our ignorance, which we might talk about as in the Garden of Eden, when the forbidden fruit is eaten and people start to become more sinful, and that connection to our deeper purity, we can see this. We also see this in the story of Sekhmet and Kemetic wisdom. So we have these times where people were seen as becoming very naughty, okay, and this corrupts that essence of being totally at one with the divine. That only really these God realized, highly realized masters. We have some of these people always. There are always some present on the planet, and you can see in their astrological charts. Wow, the electricity's gone off. I don't know if this is going to keep going. Let's see. Wow. The light is better. Hey. So I don't know if we're still here. Let's keep going. I have to remember this. So we're on the Khasi tribe. And so, yeah, I love it. Like God. And now the light is better. Whoa. So, so basically, we've had this these cosmologies which say we lost that innate purity that made us just at one with being the divine child, that full emanation of the divine and that full connection. And for the Khasi tribe, we need to seek an intermediary, and they call them the ancestors. And certainly the ancestral line is seen as important, but somebody else might see it as Ganesha or Jesus Christ. And there's actually a very big weighting from what I read, and I mean not waiting in line, like a big, weighting at heaviness or priority given to the fact that each person's ancestor has its own, it should really be a personal connection. And that we should all have that uniqueness. So actually it's really not advised that you have the same ancestor as your dad or mum. You're really supposed to cultivate that connection, which is back to the sovereignty of this spiritual experience that we all have to have. And this is one of the issues I have about the dogmatic approaches of religion, because people are not really able to flow into their own journey to find their own. We're all the divine child, but we all need that intermediary. We have to kind of fake it until we make it. And so this is why learning to have faith and learning to bow down to something, not only does it humble the ego, but it's also exceedingly important as suturing that connection which has been lost, which the Khasi tribe speak of. And if we look at, say, Native American traditions, they will pray to Creator, but they often use tobacco as the intermediary. When we might be in Buddhism, We might be doing Vajrayana Buddhism. It's very important to bow to Guru. Guru devotion is exceedingly important. Again, the intermediary or the refuge field we tap into to give us the energy to tap into our own Buddha nature. Okay, so again, and maybe praying to Jesus Christ, praying to Allah. Okay, all of these things, and we have to always have this humility in the symbol, the messenger, the teacher, the lineage, all of these things, because these cosmologies tell us, we kind of lost that privilege by the manifestation of our karma and our more afflicted nature. So this is something that I think is really inspiring, that we have people suddenly manifesting in their spiritual journey, people who have faith around them. And this is what I see as missing for a lot of these seekers who haven't started working on the ego, is that actually it's all very plumped up. I am God, but they don't actually have the technology around it for that full connection. And they don't have the qualities. They're not like exuding that light of the divine. And they don't have that grace of the divine around them either. Okay. And it's very evident to see. You can hear it in people's language. You can see, I think something that I've really benefited from is being with Indigenous tribes who pray. And, they pray and they honor the directions, they honor the ancestors, they honor Creator, they honor the animals around them. And we in the West, everybody's just like, it's just me. I'm just like already like this. And they don't mention their teachers, they don't mention the lineage that their teachings are from. And because the ego doesn't even want to bow down to the fact that they've entered into some sort of lineage. So we struggle with that in the West, and therefore we don't really get that ineffable joy of the true connection to the divine, which is so splendid when we're in it. The deluge has started around me. Wow. So I'm going to leave it there. It's very interesting because like the power's gone up. There's a deluge has just happened around me. So I hope that this helps to purify something for everybody listening, to really examine our motivations, because people really don't want to think that they can subordinate to something bigger than them, and they miss the real show. Okay, and then it's kind of pseudo spirituality, and they're never going to progress on their spiritual path, because until we stay with an inability to reference our elders, to reference the land, the teachers, we're not even ever going to get the opening to come into that full descent of grace. And we might progress, we might be a nice person, but that true bliss of the oneness, it comes through really that deep service and bowing down to something, and also trusting. It's about really having faith. And a lot of people just don't really know what faith with the big F is. Okay. And so then they think it sounds very kind of Christian and overzealous or messianic. But I really, really want to say that faith is so, so important, because when you start to cultivate it, the miracles will start. And I really want to just finish on using some of the teachings of Sri Anandamayi Ma, who really was seen as a manifestation of the Divine Mother. And for her, it's like, look, you have 24 hours a day when God is looking after you. Minimum you should be doing is spending 15 minutes just really bowing and praying and calling God's name, whatever that is for you. And this is this whole thing. We have to cultivate this. You have to grow that relationship. And then true joy really comes through, because you really have bowed down to the exquisite mystery that you are part of. So I do really recommend Sri Anandamayi Ma's teachings, because they're non-sectarian and her mind stream is so powerful. And so sometimes when we don't have the strong enough connection ourselves, tapping into her or some of these other God realized saints helps you to make that connection. And the more you use that connection, the more you actually will become God realized. Okay. But we have to, like the Kasi tribe, you have to kind of use the intermediary for now. There's now thunder. So there we go, laying it on the table for you all. And I want to give gratitude to the divine in its full flow right now as this manifestation of transformation energy. Gracias, gracias, gracias.